The Madagascar Plan was a project devised by some of the leaders of Nazi Germany to deport European Jews to the island of Madagascar. But first, just a little description. Madagascar, on the southeast coast of Africa, is the largest island on the continent and was at that time a French colony which had maintained its occupation since 1890. Now, returning to the plan, it began to be developed in June 1940 by the official Franz Rademacher, who has joined the Nazi Party in 1933 and who was head of the Jewish department of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from 1937 to 1940 at the Embassy German in Uruguay. 2 years earlier, the French Foreign Minister Georges Bonnet had informed the German Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop that it would be necessary to rid France of 10,000 Jewish refugees and send them elsewhere. By that time, Franz Rademacher was sure that all Europe wanted to get rid of the Jews, and not just Germany, which in fact, he was right. This hatred was so naturalized that even on a trip to Belgrade, he presented a claim for expenses to the state, stating that the official purpose of the trip was, and I'm not kidding, to liquidate the Jews. This man formulated his conclusions on the Jewish question in the peace treaty. And you may ask, what is the Jewish question? Well, the Jewish question is a concept, a very old debate in a society that tries to agree on the treatment that Jews should receive. This debate will lead in the Second World War to the final solution, a plan to systematically eliminate that part of the population which after the war will be known as the Holocaust. But the Nazis didn't invent hatred of Jews, and neither the idea of sending them to Madagascar or some part of Africa. This idea was born at the end of the 19th century. Paul de la Garde was a German, a student of the Bible and of different cultures, who believed that the Jews were one of the greatest barriers to German unification. Yes, perhaps that argument sounds to you from somewhere. Wherever, this man proposed that this community be resettled in Palestine or Madagascar. Also discussed in the Zionist Congress in 1903 was the Uganda Plan, the possibility of creating a Jewish homeland in East Africa as a temporary refuge for them to escape the growing anti-Semitism, especially in Russia where even lynchings were practiced. Politicians and famous people from many parts of Europe promoted these ideas, from the English to the French to the Poles. Like the Englishman Arnold Lees, founder of the Imperial Fascist League, and Henry Hamilton Beamish, founding journalist of the organization The Britons, the first in Great Britain that was created specifically to spread anti-Semitic propaganda. Remember when I said a moment ago that the French Foreign Minister had informed Germany that they should send their Jews elsewhere? Well, the French government helped Poland in 1937 to study this Madagascar option. Polish politicians didn't want them either, and in a long study, the head of the commission concluded that the island could be home to 5,000 to 7,000 families. With the Madagascar Plan, France was expected to cede the island to Germany, who will administer and govern it after deporting all the Jews. A plan of this size, which is a big size, will cost a tremendous amount of money, since they also thought of relocating and financially compensating the 25,000 French who lived there. But in order to pay for it, they were going to use the assets of this Jewish community, administered by a special bank. The evacuation plan was designed to exile 4 million people over a period of 4 years who will work on the island as farmers. Although the idea was in charge of Franz Rademacher, all these details were directed by Adolf Eichmann, who you have surely heard of. Adolf Eichmann was a high-ranking Nazi officer, one of those who devised the final solution and one of those in charge of forced immigration, who later escaped to Argentina after the war, my country and where I live right now, and was found in Buenos Aires in 1960, posing as Ricardo Clement. They took him to Israel and sentenced him to hang. The plan was leaked and published in Italy in June 1940. The American Jewish Committee, meanwhile, or committee? I don't know, commissioned a special report that was published 9 months later, in which they tried to show that Jews could not survive to the conditions on the island. Meanwhile, Hans Frank, governor of the occupied part of Poland, considered resettlement preferable to deportation efforts to Poland. Well, my tongue is pretty hard today. Whatever, in July 10, 1940, the deportations were cancelled and the completion of the Warsaw Ghetto was cancelled too, since they saw it unnecessary. Why, if the Jews were going elsewhere? A ghetto is like a closed neighborhood, an area separated from the rest of the population where certain ethnic, cultural or religious groups are relegated. Franz Rademacher wrote in the report, "The next victory gives Germany the possibility, and in my opinion also the duty, to resolve the Jewish question in Europe. The desirable solution is all Jews outside of Europe." He described the task of the Chancellery one by one, from determining the new settlement, preparing service with data on the number of Jews in each country, to including the demand on the peace treaty when the war ended, etc., etc. He even dictates negotiations with our friend Italy on these matters. And I quote, again, "This arrangement will prevent the possible establishment in Palestine by the Jews of a Vatican state of their own, and the opportunity for them to exploit for their own ends the symbolic importance that Jerusalem has for the Christian and Muslim parts of the world. Furthermore, Jews will remain in German hands as a promise for the future good behavior of members of their race in America." It should be added that the SS, or Schutzstaffel, the military organization in Hitler's service, will undertake the expulsion of the Jews from Europe and will rule the island as a police state. The hope of the Nazis was that after the invasion of the United Kingdom in Operation Sea Lion, they will command the British merchant fleet to transport the Jews to Madagascar, but this invasion was never carried out. Many Nazi leaders actually expected that many deportees would die under the harsh conditions that awaited them or at the hands of the SS, something like a genocide but with an alternative method. When the idea of moving the Jews with the English fleet fell through, the Madagascar Plan stalled. So, in August 1940, activity was resumed in the ghettos of Warsaw and other cities in Poland. That plan was too difficult to execute, especially in the middle of the war. The German army invaded the Soviet Union in 1941 after Hitler broke his pact with Stalin. There, it was definitely decided to start deporting people to the conquered territories of Eastern Europe, especially the Soviet Union, through Poland. When it became clear that the invasion of the Soviet Union would last longer than estimated, they had to throw the idea away, as transporting such a large mass of people to a combat zone will be impossible. Reinhard Heydrich, the founding director of the SS Security Service, decided then that Jews would be killed in extermination camps established in occupied areas of Poland. In the end, more than 3 million people would die in those camps, but none of them would set foot in Madagascar. If you like the content and you didn't find my Latin American accent so ugly, please share, like the video and subscribe for more history. Because remember, history helps to understand the past. Understand the past explains the present and can even reveal the future. So, goodbye and thank you for listening.